If you're anything like me, starting out visual effects, I was super overwhelmed with how much everything cost, everything from the 3D programs all the way to the assets that we used. And so today I wanted to make a workflow that had none of the paywalls that comes with visual effects, but we can still get a pretty good result. And so up on the screen now is everything that you'll need to go ahead and download that we're going to be using today. Everything is totally free, and so go ahead and download that. Links are in the description below. Okay, so first up, we have to go ahead and convert the footage that you went ahead and downloaded. We're going to be using DaVinci Resolve today to do that. They do offer a free version, and so we're going to be using that to convert our footage into a image sequence. Let's drag and drop this into the timeline. We can go ahead and change the project rate. We're going to right click, go to timeline settings, and then we're going to uncheck use project, go to use vertical resolution. Okay, and there we go. Now it's set up correctly. Now we do need to go ahead and format this to a specific color space that we're going to be using in the compositing process. And so I'm going to come to the color section right down here. We're going to come over to this tab. If you don't see it, it's just the effects tab up here. We can drag and drop this color space transform into this little layer over here. Now this footage was probably shot in sRGB, so I'm going to set both of the input ranges to sRGB, and then our output range we want to set to linear Rec 709. So for the color space, we're going to set Rec 709, and then for the output gamma, we're going to set as linear. This is going to be very important in the Nuke compositing process that we're going to do at the very end. So let's come down here. Let's go to deliver. We do want to be delivering in a linear color space, since that is the best kind of color space to use for visual effects. And so in the delivery tab, instead of QuickTime, we need to select, where is it? It is EXR right here. We're going to do RGBA half DWAA. It just compresses a little bit more. The resolution is correct. The only other thing I like to do is come over to file. I'll set this down to A4 just so we have 4 digits in the file name. And then the clip starting at frame 1 is what we want. We can save this in whatever location you want to save it in, and then you just want to go ahead, add this to the render queue, and then render it all over here. Okay, so once that has rendered, you should have a folder that looks like this. We have a ton of EXR sequences here. And so now we are ready to go ahead and hop inside of our next program of choice, which is going to be Blender. So inside of Blender, we can just hit A to delete everything. I want to come up here and camera track the footage. So we're going to go to VFX motion tracking. We're going to open up our EXR sequence. So here is my EXR sequence. We can hit A, open the clip, and we're going to go ahead and set the scene frames and prefetch the footage just so it loads in a little bit faster. We're going to come over here to render color management. We're going to set this to standard for now, just so that the colors are as accurate as possible during this step. What then we can do is come over to normalize. We're going to match the previous frame, go to tracking settings extra, set that correlation to a 0.9, and then pattern size and search size look fine to me. We're going to go ahead and detect some features. Let's go down here, set the threshold to a 0.01. And then a distance, we can decrease that to like an 80 or something, just so we have some more tracking markers in our scene. Then we can either hit this button right here or just hit Control and T and that have those track forward. Don't worry if I'm going super fast. I actually have a dedicated video, and if you want to watch that, that'll be in the top right of the screen now. Or you can check out the link in the description of this video. That video will go over this entire process in detail, so don't worry if any of this is very confusing. Let's go ahead and detect some more features at the very end. Control Shift T this time, that'll track it backwards. You can see we're having a lot of kind of markers go haywire, and so what I like to do is kind of do a manual pass down here. So we can see our graph section. All we're kind of looking for here are any ones that aren't kind of like with some of the other tracking markers. So as you can see, we have like a lot of tracking markers down in this area over here. So I'm just coming up here and deleting all the kind of outlier markers that are kind of a little bit haywire. And so this is the exact kind of process you want to do as well. Just select all these and delete these at the bottom. And then also if we come down, at the top, but also at the bottom. So down here as well. So we just want to delete all these before we go ahead and solve our motion. So I'll be back after I delete most of the outliers. Okay, so now you can see that our graph is looking much better. Just the markers that are around this area are the markers I'm going to keep. Blender can go ahead and solve out the rest, so we're going to go ahead and delete here soon. So let's go to the Solve tab. We're going to go ahead and select the A and B keyframe. For this is just the range where there's the most amount of parallax in our shot. So for me, I'm going to go like, let's say 90 to 110. So 90 for A, 110 for B. We're going to refine everything right here. So just click all 3 of those and solve our camera motion. We got a solver, which is right up here. We want that number as low as possible. I'm going to try to get below a 0.3 today. And so that is what we're going to do. You can also see on the graph that we need to make this blue line as straight as possible, just so that the solve error is as same throughout our entire shot. And so let's come up here. We can go ahead and do a cleanup pass. So we're going to come over to the cleanup, clean tracks. We're going to projection error that up. So we'll select just that many. For example, we want kind of the most high error tracks at first. So we can go ahead and solve the camera motion. That should bring us down to a nice number. So 1.38, that is nice. Let's go ahead and clean up the tracks some more times. The reason you don't want to do it all out of the gate is because each time it'll actually get it lower and lower. And so this, now we know we have the most correct tracking markers in our scene. And we can see we are below that 0.3 number I wanted to get to. So 0.25 is really good. We can save this and we are ready to go ahead and set up our 3D scene up here. So I'm going to go ahead and set background tracking scene right there. We now have some objects in here. Real quick, for some reason this Blender doesn't automatically recognize the resolution, and so let's come over to the output. We're just going to copy and paste these numbers and switch those. So we're at 1080p by 1920. There we go. That looks a little bit better right now. Next, let's go ahead and orient the scene because this is kind of floating up in midair. We actually need to go ahead and set up the floor collection down here. So if I kind of zoom in here, we do have some floor markers on the scene. So let's go ahead and try to find those where they are in the clip. So here we go. We have some floor markers in our scene. I'm just going to select 3 of these down here. So those 3, we're going to come to the floor section and we're going to set the floor, and there we go. Now we have our plane on the floor of our little ground. And so that's going to be very important as we kind of position our 3D scene within inside Blender. So next we can go ahead and set up the rotation of our scene. So I'll set the origin to this one. And then for now, I'll set like the rotation to be this one. So X axis right there. We can always change that a little bit later. And then for the actual scale of the scene, that's very important to set up as well. This cube that it has by default, if we go ahead and G, Z, and then just control shift that up 1 unit, you can see that it's basically 2 meters. And how I know that is if I hit N over here, we can go to item, and this is 2 meters tall in the Z direction. So that is a good kind of reference for how big this object is. And so what I'm going to do is with these 2 markers down here, I can go ahead and set scale. We're going to play around with this number until it's roughly 2 meters. And so you can think of 2 meters as basically a very, very tall person. And so we have some people in this scene over here. And so I'm just going to eyeball it. And that's roughly 2 meters within, margin of error. If we actually shot this footage, I might actually take some measurements and stuff. But since this was online, we're kind of doing some guesswork right here. Okay, so that is pretty much all the camera tracking done. Let's come out to the layout view just so we can see everything. We have everything set up. You can see we have the cube, everything. Now over here, we are seeing some warping and stuff. Don't worry, that is totally natural. That is the lens distortion that we had Blender go ahead and calculate. We can also see the distortion up in the compositing section, along with some other nodes. We honestly don't need any of these 3 nodes, so we're just going to delete those. This undistortion node, we're actually going to uncheck from here, and we're going to add it to our render layers. The reason being is because we don't want to distort our footage. We actually want to distort our CG. And so since we do want to distort it, not undistort it, we need to change that to distort. And honestly, I'm going to be doing my compositing in another program. I find Blender compositing is really rudimentary. And so we're going to be using a free program called Nuke non-commercial today for that. And it's going to be really amazing. I can't wait to show you guys that workflow. But let's go ahead and delete these. We can just plug the distortion into the composite just so we can see the final CGI, since that is all we care about inside Blender. So we're going to go back to layout, and now we pretty much have everything set up. There are a few things that Blender went ahead and actually put for our tracking scene. So it did add some new collections for our simplicity. I'm just going to delete those. Also, everything besides the camera, I kind of like to work from scratch there and add as we go. And finally, we have this background view layer up here. We're not going to be using that today, and so we're going to go ahead and exit out of that. Okay, so now we are ready to start doing some CGI work. So let's first come to our render engine. I'm going to set it to cycles, set my device to GPU compute, denoise our viewport. I like to set the sample count to start off with at 512 for 1080p footage. I find that that works pretty well for giving us enough samples to actually denoise it a little bit later. Of course, denoise, we're going to set to open image denoise. That's very important. We're going to use the GPU just so it's a little bit faster. And the final things that we have to make sure is let's go down to film, transparent. And now since we're in the CGI process, we can go to color management. We want to set it from standard to AGX. I won't get too involved into the color management side of things. I actually just released a video going over everything color management, and so if you're curious about that, you can check out the link in the description below. Anyways, now that we have all of our properties set up correctly, let's go ahead and start modeling out this scene. Now, what I want to model is everything that's going to interact with our CGI. And so such as like this little column right here, we want to maybe model out some of this side, all this stuff. I basically want some, CGI balls kind of flying throughout the scene, very abstract kind of, fly around stuff. And so let's go ahead and model out everything. So I'm going to start with the floor. We can just move that. I do want to kind of match the rotation of the scene. You can see we're a little bit diagonal, and so that's super easy. If I bring a new window out here, I can hit 7 on my numpad to go to the top view, and with the camera selected, we can hit R and then Z, and we can just move that around. So something like right there might be good. Let's just double check, just move this, maybe a little bit more. So if I scale that out, you can see we're just a little bit wrong over here. So again, select the camera, R, Z, just move it around. Something right there might be perfect, and so we'll see. And there we go. That is much better, and aligns with the camera of our scene a little bit more. So that is a super quick tip if you are dealing with any rotation issues right there. So next we have the floor right here. Let's go ahead and start trying to model this out. Also, if you are new to Blender, I do have some of my shortcuts down at the bottom right of the screen, and so you can see what we're actually pressing and everything right there if you are new to the program. So anyway, let's select the faces over here, SY, to scale this out. I basically want to model out this little column because the balls are actually going to interact with that. And so let's go ahead and model that out. So I'm going to hit Control R to add some loop cuts right here. Gonna try to nail our corners of the little column right here. If I select this edge, I can EZ move that up, and now we just have to go ahead and model this out. It doesn't need to be super accurate because these balls are actually floating in air, so we don't need them to stick perfectly to the ground. So that's why this shot is a great kind of beginning shot to do, since we can cheat a lot to actually, get them to look like they're interacting and stuff. Let's go ahead and cheat this little vertex in. And then we'll bring this up as well. Yeah, so you can see our camera track isn't the best on the floor, but I think it'll be good enough in testing when, the balls where they need to interact and everything like that. So that looks pretty good. Also, since this is a 3D object, we can't really tell from the footage, but it is a 3D object. It would cast some shadow on the balls as it would like turn around and go around it. So we do need to go ahead and make this 3D. What I'm going to go ahead and do is let's select all this stuff. I'm going to go ahead and hit P to separate. So now we have two separate objects, our little chimney section up here, or the part of the bridge, and then the floor down here. I just like to keep those separated. Let's come back to this little middle section. I'm going to hit E to extrude this out, just so we have some depth into it, roughly around there. It's not going to matter how far back it actually goes. So that looks good. We can go ahead and just move throughout our footage, make sure it tracks pretty, all right. Again, it doesn't need to be perfectly matched, but that looks pretty good to me. Now we are ready to go ahead and start dealing with the ball physics. Now what I'm going to do is let's go ahead and add a mesh UV sphere right there. We're going to kind of put this to the side, and then what we need to actually control the balls with is going to be a force. Where is it? It is down here, force field. We're going to do force, and then if I bring this up and like out here, for example, if we go to the force section, we can make the strength a negative number. So I think I can't remember exactly in testing. This is maybe where we're going to have to play a little bit around with the physics. I'm going to try a negative 1000 force. And then if we go ahead, I want the kind of ball and force to be in the same place on frame 1. So I kind of want it to be behind the camera to start out with. So that looks good. Let's also bring the ball over here as well. Maybe make it a little bit smaller. So something like that. And now what I want to do is I want to add this ball to be a rigid body. And so now it should be affected by physics. So as you can see, I can move this around and the ball kind of lags behind and follows there. So that's exactly what I want. Now I want the force field to actually move throughout the scene based on where I want the balls to actually go. And so that is going to be super easy. We can just go to the top view here. Again, I am on frame 1 down here. It might be a little bit hard to see. There we go. So I am on frame 1 down here. And so what I can do is I'm going to turn on auto keying. And so if I just hit K and then L, that'll add a location keyframe. But now that we have an auto keying on, we won't have to make any more keyframes ourselves. So we'll go to like frame 30, for example. Like place our little sphere right here. Remember, this is like where the chimney is, so we want to make sure that it goes around. And so we'll go like right here, maybe it's there, Maybe it goes here. I'm kind of just guesstimating. We can always move around the timing of the frames afterwards. And like here, and then frame 130, it's like behind the camera again. So there you go. It basically, if we play this now, it basically just goes like that and then goes around this little thing. Now, of course, the timing is way off. And so let's play around with that a little bit. First thing I notice is that I don't like how far the force field is actually going out of the way. And so I might like bring it a little bit closer to this middle section. Again, auto keying is on. And so as long as we're on that frame, it's going to go ahead and overwrite that previous keyframe. And then let's come to 102 as well. We'll just move it in a little bit tighter to this middle section right here. Next, let's do the timing. And so in order to do the timing, we're going to go ahead. Let's bring this keyframe a little bit over here. So I'm just hitting G down here to select and move those. And so like that, I do notice I don't want it to kind of like do this like kind of question mark pattern. I kind of want it to be a little bit more smooth there. So in order to do that, I might move it a little bit down in this position just so it's a little bit more smooth like that. There we go. So that's a little bit better. Let's move this back as well. This is kind of just trial and error at this point. And I'm going to move this even further down just so it's not colliding with any of this section over here. So there we go. That's looking good. And then it kind of slows down here. So we might play around with the timing of the keyframes. Again, this is kind of just trial and error, guys. Like I can do this a million times and each different time it'll be a different result. So that's kind of the fun with it, right? You can get a different result every single time, and that is great. So we'll just play around with these a little bit more. Yeah, I'm going to say that's pretty good. I can spend, you know, as long as I want on the animation, but, you know, you guys can spend as much time and even do your own custom animation stuff. Now, what I want to do is I want to go ahead and start messing around with some of the physics properties. Again, I might increase this to a 1,500. So just times that 1.5. So negative 1,500, just so it sticks on the balls a little bit more. It might be a little bit too much, so I might decrease it to like a 1,200. Like that, just so it sticks on there ever so slightly. Also, I want the balls to kind of like be jittering around and everything, so I can add another force field. I'll add a turbulence right here. We'll put this over by where the other force field is. So, and then I want this to be parented, so I'll just Control P, parent, keep transform right there, just so that both of them move in tandem. And then this one will set to like negative 1,000 again. We'll just see what we actually need. And yeah, let's go ahead and add some more kind of balls in there. I'm going to right click shade smooth for now. We can shift D. We're just going to add a few more right here. Maybe some different sizes and stuff. Just play around and see what kind of feels good for your scene. Might make them different Z levels. And then I'll select all these. Let's do some more. So I'm going to duplicate these, just rotate them random ways. We'll do one more. So we'll make some of these back here. There we go. So now we have all these kind of balls and everything right here. I'm going to go ahead and start organizing some stuff. So I'm going to hit or drag all these, select these M. We're going to make a new balls collection just so we can organize some stuff. So there we go. So now all of these balls are rigid bodies. They should fly through our scene. There you go. You can see they're doing some sick stuff. They're, you know, bouncing all around the scene, which is weird. I don't know why it, I think the turbulence I think is way too much. So what we might do is just do like 100 or something like that. We can see if that works better. There you go. Now it's kind of following around. We also might have to play around with the strength of this. We might need to set it up higher again. 1,500. Let's see. Again, you can see it's kind of lagging up here behind it, which is cool depending on kind of like what you want to do. I might just try going crazy for now, and we can always pull it back to 5,000. That might be a little bit too much, so we'll go down to like, we'll half it and see how that looks. Yeah, that doesn't look bad at all. Let's increase the turbulence. We'll do 1,000 to just see. Maybe 10,000. Again, this is like very, yeah, that's way too much. Very finicky. We'll do 2,500 and see. because I want the balls to kind of feel alive. So we'll try 5,000. There we go. Now they're kind of like, you know, fluttering everywhere. Now, one thing I actually do want to add real quick is the force field is kind of at the same level throughout the entirety of the shot. I kind of want it to, you know, trail upwards. So it's like curling around and going up on the screen. And so real quickly to do that, I'll, with the force field selected. So right here, we'll go to the graph editor. And then right here, we need the Z location. We just need to go ahead and delete that. And this is where we can go ahead and turn off the auto keying since we're going to do some manual keyframes. So right here, this is the start. That's perfectly fine for me. So I'm going to hit KL right there. And then at 130, I kind of want this to be up higher. And so we'll just GZ move that up higher. So somewhere around there, we'll say maybe a little bit higher. Then we need to KL again. And now you can see we have actually created some Z location depth only. We haven't affected our X or Y right there. So that is very good. Real quickly, I'm just going to select both of these, right click, interpolation to linear, just so it's constantly going up. It's not ramping or anything like that. So now we can see the result. We can see it kind of goes up, kind of, you know, trails there, goes around the little post, and then comes out over there. So again, every single time I do this in practice, it's been a new animation and stuff. So just play around with some of the keyframes and have a good time there. But yeah, now we are ready to go ahead and bake out the simulation. Now we do have to go ahead and make sure that it doesn't hit any of the objects that we're going to have right here. If for any reason they do go through any objects, we might as well just do that real quick. Is if you select something right here, you can hit rigid body, and we, instead of active, we want it to be passive, just so it's not affected by gravity. We'll go ahead and do that to the floor as well, just in case. Go to passive over here. And now if we play this, let's just kind of double check everything is looking good. I think in my, you know, in my test footage, I actually had them kind of hitting this section and stuff. So again, just kind of play around with it. You can even see at the end, this little ball kind of hits the side here. So that's just how you do that. Once you're happy with whatever you have, we're going to go to the scene properties, rigid body world. We're going to go to cache, set this to like 131. I always like to do it one frame after, just in case. I like to go ahead and bake those. And now you can see they're fully cached, and they are going to be the exact same animation every single time. So now we are ready to go ahead and start doing some lighting, some texture work, and getting this out to render for the composite. Let's go ahead and add a cool material to this. So I want this material to be random for all of these different objects. We can come over to the shader editor up here. Let's add a new material. I'm just going to call this balls. And then I want to make some random colors. So I'm going to go to the color ramp. We can add like 4 colors, let's say. I'm going to come over here. We want some fun colors. So let's do like a red, maybe. Like let's do like a purple, a blue, and finally like a, you know, a more light blue, something like that. Again, this is where you can play around with it, get whatever result that you want. In my final shot, instead of linear, I wanted to do a constant, just so that they are, you know, one color or not one color. I didn't want like a gradient to the color. And so once you have that, you can just plug that into the base color. And now if we go ahead, we need each individual object to be a own random color. And so in order to do that, we're going to add a object info node. Place that right here, go to random to the factor, and now it's giving a random value to each of these objects, and so that will determine what color it actually picks in here. So now let's go ahead and select all the other objects. So just selecting all the ones over here. 10 was the one that we actually had our thing on, so we want to make sure that one is the one that is yellow over there. Over here, we can hold Control L and hit M to link to materials. You can see it right here. So M right there. And now all of these materials are the exact same, and they are randomized colors. And so this is where you can do a little bit of tweaking. Say if you didn't want as many red in the shot, you could actually switch some of these colors and stuff like that. Make some bigger and make some smaller. Again, this is very flexible, so that we don't have to do any of that heavy lifting work. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. We might come at the very end, change around some of the colors. I think I did another color set for the actual final render, but I also want to make it a little bit reflective. And so let's bring the roughness down, and also might bring the specular up just a tiny bit. We can get more into that as we light the scene. And so let's go ahead and do that. Now for the lighting, what I normally do inside my own visual effects workflow is if I come over here, I have this physical atmosphere add-on. I find it's a great add-on. But again, the theme of this is no money at all. If you're literally just wanting to learn visual effects, there are tons of free ways to do everything. And so what we're going to be using is we're going to be using an HDRI. That's basically a image that has some lighting data baked into it. So let's go ahead and search that up. You can find a great free resource online is Polyhaven. They have HDRIs, textures, and models, all of which are free. And so definitely go ahead and make sure to check those out. I'm not sponsored in anything by that, just a great kind of website to use. Now you can always search through here and kind of see what HDRI you might end up working. If you actually come here, we can do some investigative work. You can see that we have some long shadows, and so that typically means that we're either at the sunset or the sunrise hour. And so you can see very long shadows on this guy over here. It's also a little bit of a yellow hue, and so that also gives us a hint of time of day. And so if it's more yellow hue, that's usually in the morning or afternoon. So typically on Polyhaven, I'll come over here to the skies tab. We'll go to like morning, afternoon, sunrise, sunset. You really can't go wrong with either. I just went throughout these and kind of found one that I thought matched that shadow as much as possible. And so I went ahead and downloaded that. If you want to download the exact one I ended up picking, you can go in the description of this video and find the link to download the free HDRI. Again, it's totally free. And so once you have that, you should have a EXR image that is saved out. So right here, Rolling Hills 4K is the one I'm going to be using. Let's go ahead and add that into the scene. So we're going to come to the color tab over here. We can click that, go to environment texture. We're going to open up our EXR image it gave us. Okay, so here it is. Let's open that up. And now if I actually, in the shading tab, if we go to world, we can actually see what it's doing. For the HDRI, since we do need to kind of affect it, you can see the shadow is kind of going down into the right now, but for some reason when it's loaded in, it's not. And so in order to actually change that, what I like to do is let's go ahead and just create a UV sphere. I can just move this upwards just so it's sitting on the floor plane, right click shade smooth. This is what I kind of like to do in my own color process is if I go ahead and just select half of this cube, or not a cube, a sphere, whoops. So select half of that. If I come over to the materials now, I'll add 2 materials, and the second material I'm going to hit assign. And since I have these selected over here, it actually assigned half of the object to be a separate material. And so for this first one, we're just going to leave blank. For this one though, we're going to create a new material. This one I want to be fully metallic and then fully 0 on roughness, so that it's basically a chrome ball effect. And so this is nice because it gives both our reflection data and then also the white data, and so we can match it to the actual scene and see if it feels right within our visual effects. It's just kind of a nice way to work to get both of those things. So you can see it also gives us some reflection data, which is going to be pretty nice to sell in that this is actually in the real world. So that is looking good. Let's go ahead and rotate the shadow so it's going the correct way in our scene. Real quickly, just to help out with that, I'm going to come over to the object properties, visibility. We're going to set this mask to be a shadow catcher, just so we can still see our CG shadow on top of our footage shadow. So over here, we can add Control T if you have the Node Wrangler add-on installed. We're going to come and set this rotation Z value. We're just going to rotate that until it's roughly following the same way. So like right there is looking pretty good, roughly following the same exact lighting and same exact way. So now with the chrome ball, let's just go throughout the scene. Does this feel like it's actually could be white and lit in the shot? And to my eyes, it does. You can see over here some of the faces and stuff. It's kind of the same directionality, same shadow. It even has the same kind of sun properties that are inherent in this shadow right here. And so that is really good. We know for a fact that it is a good HDRI to use. That's how I kind of do lighting for free if you don't want to go down any add-ons or anything like that. Super easy, super quick. Okay, so now that we have the lighting taken care of, let's do some final things in order to get this to a good enough standard. We can go ahead and X out of here. Now, real quickly, I just want to go ahead and say, you can see in the reflections, we have like some white materials and stuff that look kind of weird and out of place. That is because both of these materials, I'll go ahead and undo the shadow catcher for now. Both of these materials are just a plain white texture. So what we need to do is go ahead and project the footage onto these these objects right now. So let's come to the object properties over here. We're going to add a new material, go to footage, we're going to add a image texture, and then we're going to open up our EXR sequence of our footage. So right here, open image, and then it loads in the frames correctly. So you just want to double check that. Auto refresh on, just so it'll cycle to the current frame. So we're on frame 91 and it'll cycle to 80 on 80, for example. We'll plug that into the base color. And then Control T, we need this to be a window texture coordinate, just so it projects from our window point of view. And since that's the camera, it's basically just how we project like that. And now if we go to that same frame that we had before over here, you can now see we actually see some of that texture onto the actual thing. And so that's very nice. This also comes to like how much you want to model in the actual scene. If I was doing this for a client or something, then I would actually go ahead and model like everything up here. Not perfectly, it doesn't need to be exactly perfect, but since we are using it for reflections, you know, as nice of a shape as possible, it would be very nice just to get some accurate reflections there. So I'm going to leave that up to you if you want to go ahead and go down that extra step to model out everything over here. But for my scene, I'm just going to do this object and this object. Let's select both of these again. Control L and then M to make those the materials again. Now we are having some weird kind of, you know, clipping issues down here. We'll change this to mirror just to solve that a little bit. And then also I'm seeing that we're having a lot of kind of reflections on this plane. We don't want that, so I'm going to change the roughness up, maybe the specular down, just so we don't have any reflections on these actual objects. Now the final thing that I want to do is I want to go ahead and make some geometry here and some other stuff that it might be affecting in the scene, such as like as it comes through here, we might have some like weird shadows on some of this fence and stuff here. So we can do that really quick. So I'm going to do mesh plane. We can just model out this little fence over here. So like that, I'll go ahead and turn that off. Yeah, so let's just push this back here. It doesn't need to be super complex, but just I found in testing it helps out a little bit. Also, there's this little trash can right here, so we can go ahead and try to model that out as well. So I'll bring this over here, just make that a little bit smaller. Then we can bring this face up. And don't worry if I'm going really fast. You guys can find some modeling tutorials and stuff out here. I'm trying to keep it as basic as possible. We can shade smooth that one, or we need a smooth eye angle. There we go. So yeah, so now we have some of these objects over here kind of modeled out. Let's bring this out here. So some more area for our shadow. I might bring just the whole thing over here. So something like that, that is looking good. And then also as these balls kind of go around this bridge, it would be kind of, you know, hidden. The shadow would be hitting these objects right now, versus right now they're fully kind of in light. And so that wouldn't make sense. You know, that's one thing that would kind of throw off your eyes if you did do this shot and kept it like that. So I'm just going to quickly make a kind of thing over here. It doesn't need to be exactly perfect since it's just, again, using it for a shadow thing. But we'll come here, I'll make it a little bit larger. So there you go. So now you can see some of the balls in the back are actually being hit by that shading and stuff, and that is looking nice. So yeah, so I might actually bring it like right over here. We'll see. It's very kind of like, you know, up to how good your camera track is and stuff, but that is looking pretty decent and matches pretty well to my eye right there. So that is looking good. Now for all the objects that we just added, let's go ahead and add that material into it again. So Control L M for the material. There we go. That is looking pretty good. Final thing that we need to do, of course, is we can see all these objects. We don't want any of these objects to be seen. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to the object properties. Again, that shadow catcher with all of our objects selected. So let's see, those are all the objects. We can actually hold Alt, and then if we click this, it'll go ahead and just do it for all of them. And so now we can only see the balls and the thing, and that's exactly what I want. Okay, yeah, so that is pretty much it for that. Let's go ahead and talk about setting this up to do some render settings. Now, what I did for my thing is I actually broke out the balls and the shadow separately. And so I'll show you how to do that real quick. First of all, let's select all these objects that we have here. I'm going to hit M and add a new collection, choose shadow. So we have all of those objects in its own shadow collection down here, and then all the balls and everything in its own collection over here. So it separates out those two things, because now what I want to do is this view layer, we'll name balls up here. We'll make a new view layer up here. View layers are just ways to separate out different objects if you're doing different render passes. And so now we have two separate things. If we actually bring a new filter over here, we're going to use the indirect only filter. We're going to go over here to balls. Since we're in the shadow collection, we're going to set that to indirect only. And what that does is now we can actually see the balls, but everything that the balls actually interact with, such as the shadow, for example, is going to be seen. I don't think on this one we see too many. You might be able to see some shadow as they pass up here, which is totally good. That is very cool. And we'll get some more interaction in the scene that really sells the CGI. And so that is our shadows done. Let's go to the balls layer, and we just want to do the opposite. We don't want our shadows up here. You can still see we have some shadow. Let's go ahead and turn that to indirect only as well. And so now you can't see the shadow, but you can see the balls. And so that is how we have it set up now. Let's go ahead and render this out. So we're going to go to the compositing tab. We're going to come up to render layers. We're going to duplicate that, add a shadows render layers so that we can have two separate passes to render out. Now we do need to go ahead and distort this one as well. So we're going to plug the image into the image. And now we have these distortion nodes. Again, we want to distort the CGI just because that'll match the camera tracking as much as possible. So what we can do now is we'll go to add a file output node. So I'll set that right there. We'll go to node properties. And then this is where we want to go ahead and decide how we want to render this out. You can render it out as PNG. PNG will actually go ahead and bake in this AGX information. What I'm going to do instead though is we're going to set this to open layer EXR. We can see that we have color depth, and I'm going to set that to float half right there. Codec to DWAA. The reason we're doing a multi-layer is because this will save as one file so that we can actually have multiple layers within the same file. It just saves up a little bit of clutter in the folder structures. Anyway, we can add two inputs right here. Of course, save it wherever you're going to save out the final animation. You're going to save that there. You can name these whatever you want. I highly recommend you, as your first layer, you put RGBA. I'll explain why a little bit later as we get into Nuke. But this second one, we're going to do shadow. Then you can put an underscore, whatever you want. Of course, again, name your EXR file up here into a new location. And then we're just going to drag and drop these into here. So shadow into the shadow, and then balls into the RGBA. So that is pretty much it. We now have everything set up, and we are ready to render our animation. You want to do some final checks, such as coming over here, making sure that our render size and scale is set up correctly. So if you want to go a higher sample count, definitely make sure to do that. Maybe set this up to render overnight. Motion blur is turned on. I do believe for the final animation, I actually turned this down to a 0.3 just because I found the motion trails were a little bit too high for me. So I just, again, turned that down to a 0.3. It led to less motion blur, but I thought it was a little bit more of a visually interesting shot that way. So yeah, right there. And then everything else looks good. We are ready to render this out. So let's go and render the animation. Okay guys, we are in the home stretch now. We finally have to do some compositing to get this to look as good as possible. Now you want to make sure you download Nuke non-commercial. Nuke is the industry standard compositing tool. It's an amazing tool set. And the reason I'm actually using Nuke non-commercial instead of, for instance, like DaVinci Resolve Fusion is I find it's such a better program for what it offers. And if you are looking to get into visual effects, you're a little silly not to learn Nuke just because so many studios are looking for jobs inside of Nuke. And so for free, you can learn the program and everything like that. So let's go ahead and jump into the program. I'll try to explain it as much as possible for you beginners out there, but let's go ahead. I like to shift F3 to go into this workspace. I just find this workspace looks a little bit better. Next, let's go ahead and hit S to go into the project settings. Now, the only unfortunate thing about Nuke non-commercial is you can only do 1080p footage. And so what that means is we're going to have to come over here and go to the HD 1080 over here. Now, that is a horizontal video, but basically what we're going to do is we're going to render it as a horizontal video. And then at the very end, we're going to rotate it so that we can rotate it back in another program such as like DaVinci, for example. So let's go ahead and read in some of our footage. So you can hit R to read in some of our CGI. Okay, so here's my EXR layer of our CGI. So I'm going to go ahead and open that in. And then let's go ahead and locate our footage as well. So right here, again, that is the EXR sequence that we rendered out of DaVinci right there. And so let's go ahead, and with these two selected, I can hit M to add a merge node. And if I just control, I can snap that just to organize a little bit better. Now for this viewer, if we just hit 1 on our keyboard, we can actually view whatever node we have selected. So as you can see, we have all of this now that is looking really good. Now, one thing I do want to kind of point out is that for some reason, the Blender AGX is not that great for EXR footage. I find it's very finicky to actually get it in. And so what we actually have to do in order to make this look like it did, how it did inside of Blender, you can see it's being blown out and looks kind of ugly right now, is we can go ahead and hit S again to go into project settings. We're going to go to the color tab up here. By default, Nuke kind of handles the color management, but we don't want that. We want the OCIO to handle the color management. we want to come down to custom, and we're going to load in a custom config, and this is the config.ocio. You can see here is the folder structure, and so I'll have this pasted in the description if you want to kind of locate this. You do want to make sure whatever Blender version you're using, it's kind of that same exact folder path. But this is Blender OCIO file, basically contains all the information for AGX, standard, all of that stuff. And so with that selected, we can open that up. You can see we have all of our color spaces in there now. And up here we have standard. Again, that was the standard view transform inside of Blender, but we used AGX. And so let's select AGX. And now you can see all the colors look exactly how they did inside of Blender. And so that's really nice. We are finally ready to go ahead and start doing some compositing. And so what we want to do is we want to go ahead and determine some different things that we want to do with this. First thing, of course, is we have to rotoscope out all of this, the buildings and stuff up here. So what I'm going to do is let's go ahead and add a to add a roto node, and I want to start kind of messing with some of these things up here. So for instance, I'm not going to show you everything since rotoscoping takes a long time, but I'll kind of show you the gist and you guys can apply it to your own footage. And so we'll come up here, some of the things here like that, and it's just going about around this and trying to get this to match wherever this little middle of the bridge is, since the balls are behind this in the real world for now. Anyway, we'll come down here. I'll apply this as a mask there. You can see they're flipped right now. So actually what I want to do is if I double click inside of the merge node, I can come over here and invert the mask right there. So now you can see it's basically cutting that out. And now all you have to do is see everybody's favorite process in visual effects of rotoscoping. You just come we'll say 5 frames, and then you'll adjust like this side, for example. So this side kind of crept in a little bit down here. And that is looking pretty good. We mostly just care about some of these areas up here. And so there. And then after that is good, we'll go like 5 more frames over here and then do the exact same process. And so that is pretty much the entire process for rotoscoping. I like to go 5 frames at a time. And at the very end, say now we come back here and it's looking like it's sticking pretty well, like the animation, but say it's like a little bit too much here. You can see that we're starting to see some of the pixelation of the mask. And so that's when I can kind of in between everything. And so I'll bring it in just a tiny bit there, down here, it's kind of creeping into the brick a little bit. And so I'll bring it out a little bit like that. And so that's the entire process of just kind of going by 5s, and then at the very end you'll go in between those frames and kind of problem solve there. The only thing that might be a little bit more challenging for this shot for you, and of course we'll get rid of it when it's supposed to be in front of this thing. The only other thing that's going to be a little bit interesting for this shot is some of these cables and stuff. And so what I actually did is if you select up here, you can select this open spline tool, and I'm again just going to demonstrate it, but you can click where the actual cable is right here. It just gives you a nice little line. And then if we go ahead and come over here, this green line is actually how thick it is. And so we'll just bring the thickness down for both of these. So it's like that. And there you go. That is the cable kind of rotated out an easy way. And so again, you would just go like 5 frames at a time like that. And you can be smart about it too. Nothing is right here. And so you only have to really worry about it as it gets to here, for example. And so we'll come like right here, go 5 frames ahead, place them again, and I feel like you guys get the gist. That is the crux of rotoscoping. And so after you have that rotoscoped out, we'll go on to the next step. Okay, so now that you have the rotoscoping done, we can go ahead and add in our shadow into the scene. And so if you remember, this file that we have here is actually a multi-layer file. You can tell that inside of Nuke if we add a layer contact sheet. By the way, in order to add nodes, you just hit tab. I don't know if I explained that before, but we can drag and drop this into here. And now if we view that, we can see we have 2 different things. We have the shadow and then the RGB. You can see if I go hit A over here to the alpha channel, we can see that we have some alpha channel of our shadow that is reading in perfectly. And so what we want to do, let's go ahead and delete that. That was just for demonstration, but we want to go ahead and add the shadow into our scene. And so what I'm going to do in order to shuffle out our other paths inside of that little multi-layer file, basically what we need to do is select that and hit shadow up here with the shuffle node. So now this is instead of our RGBA kind of node, it's now our shadow kind of pass over here. Also, the reason we did RGBA, I meant to say, is because natively, for some reason, Nuke reads in multi-layer files natively as RGBA file name, and so that's why we didn't have to shuffle out any over here. So for instance, if you like named it balls or anything like that, then it actually, you would have had to have added a shuffle over here and then select this. You can see RGBA is its default naming, and so I just went ahead and overwrit that, but if you named it something else, you should see that over here, so you just have to shuffle that out as well. But anyway, we can see down here we now have this shuffled out. We need to add a gray node, so that is G on the keyboard. We can select this to be the mask over here, and then if we come and play around with this, sometimes shadows can be a little bit finicky, but we'll decrease the gain, decrease the gamma a little bit. We want to try to match the shadows as much as possible, so what I'm going to do is, let's go to the gain. I can select this color wheel and I'll make it a little bit more blue over here. So that is matching a little bit better. You can see there. Might be a little bit too green, so I might decrease the green and the red, just to make it ever so slightly blue. And then gamma, we'll kind of do the same thing. We'll make it a little bit more of a blue color. So like that, yeah. So instead of making it kind of, you know, a ugly green color like it was before, we made it a nice little blue. Now, if you do get to this point and you maybe want it a little bit darker, quick tip, if you hold control, you can actually click these color wheels, and now you have an HSV value. You can move this V value down lower, so you can really get into the fine details of everything. So I might do that, might make it a little bit more green, so bump up the green a little bit more, just trying to match these kind of color values right here. But really that is looking pretty decent for my scene. I might make it a little less blue actually. So let's come down here. There you go. I feel like I was reading a little bit too blue over there. But yeah, so you can do that for the shadow. And the reason we do that instead of, you know, just applying the shuffle as a layer is because we can get much more granular into the shadows and make it match a lot better. So that is kind of the explanation of why I like doing it like that. So yeah, so again, you can see everything like that. You can see our shadows on this little wall is looking sick. But yeah, that's pretty much it. If you didn't want to do any like color correction or anything, I guess I could show that as well. What you would do is you would need to unpremult. This is kind of a new thing. If you come from like After Effects or anything like this, this kind of does the process for you. But for Nuke, since we have all the power in the world, we do need to go ahead and do this. So basically what we're doing is we're telling the alpha to not be applied yet when we do unpremult, and so in the middle of these two things, that's where we can do our color grade. And so this is why I might do like a you know, gamma it down just ever so slightly, let it pop a little bit more, hit C to add a color correct, might boost the saturation ever so slightly, just have some fun with it. Contrast might need to go, we'll just make it go up, you know, just to boost that ever so slightly like that. And so yeah, so this is where you can like get really granular into the composite and everything and stuff like that. Now you would in you know, if you actually shot this footage and stuff like that, you would have to go through a whole grain process. Honestly, this video is so compressed so much, you know, I can't tell any grain at all, and so I'm not going to be worrying about the grain process for this thing. But just know, if you actually had decent footage that isn't compressed so much, you would actually have to go ahead and at the very end like add some grain to the you know, CGI and stuff like that. But as you can tell, there's like 0 grain in the footage. I'm not going to be worrying about all the compression artifacts and stuff like that. But yeah, that is pretty much it. After you have a pretty good rotoscope and stuff, this is where we can go ahead and render this out again for totally free. Now we do need to go ahead, you can see it's 1080 by 1920. We do need to go ahead and put it to 1920 by 1080. It's a very weird thing. This is a Nuke non-commercial only problem because of some of the restrictions that it has. But in order to get around that, what we're going to do is go to reformat. We're going to add a reformat node. We're going to set it to turn, and that's it. That's all we need to do. And so now it's basically flipped sideways. And so once we actually render this out, we can export this into like DaVinci Resolve and then rotate it the other way again. So let's hit W to write this out. I'm going to write this out as just a EXR sequence again, because inside of Nuke non-commercial, you can't render out as H.264, but that is totally fine. We can go ahead and just do an EXR sequence again. So we'll go to comp, add a new folder, just name this whatever you want. And then we'll come over here, comp dot hashtag exr. That's how you have to say it inside of Nuke. That these are just the frame numbers if you are curious, so you can add more or less depending on what you want to do. We're going to save that out. You can see it's saved everything up here. We don't need zip compression. We'll just do DWAA again. Color space is going to be we want it to be in linear rec 709. If you remember, that's exactly what we did at the start, and so that is what we're going to read in right there. And then we need to render this out. 1 to 130 is good. So we're going to go ahead and hit OK to render this out. Okay, so once that finishes rendering, we have one final step to do, and that is to actually bring this EXR file back into a program like DaVinci Resolve so that we can actually export this out as a H.264 video. So I just dragged and dropped the folder into the timeline up here. We can go ahead and drag and drop that over here. Of course, now it is rotated the wrong way, and so let's select that. We'll just go ahead and do a -90 because we rotated it 90 inside of Nuke. And for some reason, we have to also affect the zoom level up here, so we'll just zoom it back out. I don't know the exact thing, but a 5.6 seems to do a pretty decent job. It seems like there's like a 1 or 2 pixel border, so we'll just go ahead and do like a 5.65 or something. I don't know the exact kind of calculation to go there, but now that is looking pretty good. We can see that the footage kind of looks the exact same as it did before, but now we have some CGI in it, so that is pretty cool. We'll select this, and we do need to reconvert this back into a color space so we can actually tell that looks good. So again, let's go to the color tab, color space transform. Now we need to do the opposite as we had before. If you remember at the very first, this is kind of where this is right now. We converted from sRGB to linear rec 709. Now we need to do the exact opposite. We need to convert from basically linear rec 709 into sRGB. So what I might do is I might just copy and paste this node over here. So now we have these exact same values over here, and we'll just swap these right here. And now you can see it's actually reading the correct values and stuff right here. Hello, this is Future Jacob. I actually forgot a step here. I totally forgot to mention, but when you have it set correctly over here, you also have to affect the tone mapping. So we're going to go ahead and click use custom max input. We're going to go ahead and change it all the way up. And so now you can see it's looking more accurate to what it was inside of Nuke. That's a step I forgot originally. And so just make sure you set that as well. This is where maybe also too, you can go ahead and add some other nodes to do some color correction on top of it. Say if we wanted to, you know, affect the colors and how it looked here, this is where you could also do that step as well. And looks super sick over here as well. So this is where you can maybe make it pop a little bit more, all that kind of stuff over here. That's where you can do that. And so now let's go ahead and finally get this out to deliver and render out a final image. So we'll go to the delivery tab over here. We'll go ahead and come to the video tab. This is where we can go ahead and set it to a QuickTime. H.264 is fine. Vertical resolution. You can export out video or sorry, audio or not. It's up to you. Set a new folder path up here, set it to render queue, and then render it over here, and you should have a final result. Okay, so here is my final result after doing all of the rotoscoping, the color correction, all of that. You can see this is the result that I'm getting. So hopefully you guys are getting something similar to here. Anyways, thanks so much for watching. Let me know what you thought of this tutorial, any suggestions you might have. I'd love to hear them down in the comment section below. Again, we do have a Patreon and Discord. You can find those in the links in the description. I'd love to see you guys over there. But anyways, thanks so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.